At our wedding reception, my mother-in-law grabbed the microphone and announced, "Your honeymoon is canceled. My son should use that money for me instead." I laughed it off at first, but then I checked my bank account and saw it was completely drained. My husband's next words made her instantly regret what she had done. I knew Diane, my mother-in-law, didn't like me, but I never imagined she'd go so far as to ruin our marriage on the very day it began. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but everything changed when she took the mic at the reception. She had a smirk on her face, clearly enjoying the chaos she was about to unleash. She tapped the mic, getting everyone's attention, and with a tone that dripped with arrogance, he said, "I have a little surprise for the bride and groom. I decided to do something special for my son because he deserves the best. So I canceled their honeymoon." The room fell silent. At first, I thought it was some twisted joke, but she didn't stop. She looked straight at me, that smug grin of hers widening. "I mean, why waste all that money on a trip when my son has real responsibilities? That money would be much better spent on family, on me." A few guests nervously laughed, waiting for someone, maybe me, maybe Jake, to tell her she was joking. But then I felt my stomach drop. I glanced at Jake, hoping he was as confused and horrified as I was, but instead he just stared at his mother. His jaw was clenched, his fists gripping the table so tightly his knuckles were turning white. I knew in that moment this wasn't some joke. My heart began racing. I grabbed my phone from under the table and opened my banking app. My fingers were trembling as I logged in, and that's when I saw it. The honeymoon fund was gone. Every cent, all the money we had saved and received as wedding gifts, completely drained. My vision went blurry and my hands turned cold. I looked at Jake, my voice barely audible. "Please, tell me this isn't true." He exhaled sharply, pulled out his phone, and checked his own account. His face turned dark. "My account is empty," he muttered. Diane was still standing there, basking in the attention, expecting applause for what she thought was a generous act. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my drink in her face. But before I could react, Jake stood up, and his next words made Diane instantly regret everything. I could feel the blood draining from my face. My hands were freezing, my stomach in knots. Our entire honeymoon fund, thousands of dollars we had saved, and the wedding gifts from family and friends, was gone. Jake was holding his phone so tightly I thought it might break. His face was unreadable, but his silence sent a shiver down my spine. Diane, my monster-in-law, stood there, glowing with pride. Then Jake stood up, and the look he gave her. I had never seen him like that before. His expression was cold, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might crack his teeth. "Mom," he said, his voice chillingly calm. "What did you do?" Diane scoffed, flipping her hair back as if she couldn't be bothered. "Oh, stop being so dramatic," she said, rolling her eyes. "I transferred the money to where it belongs. You're married now. It's time to take care of your family." She smiled sweetly, expecting him to thank her for her so-called kindness. Jake took a deep breath, his hands trembling. "Where's the money, Mom?" I already knew the answer, she sighed, acting as if we were being completely unreasonable. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, she said, "I put it in my account. Of course. I needed it for some very important things." The audacity, the nerve. Guests around us started whispering. Some were gasping. A few of my friends exchanged worried looks. My maid of honor, Sarah, had her mouth open in shock. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. "You took our honeymoon money," I said, my voice shaking. Diane laughed. "Took?" she repeated, as though it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. "Oh, honey, don't be so dramatic. You're married now. That money should be used for something more responsible, like your husband supporting his mother." I raised him. "I deserve it." I could hardly breathe. I was so furious. My vision was going dark. But Jake didn't blink. Instead, he pulled out a chair, sat back down, and leaned forward with his elbows on the table. His voice was dangerously calm when he said, "Mom, I want you to tell me exactly what you spent our money on." Diane smiled like she thought she had won. "Well," she said, counting on her fingers, "I paid off some of my credit card bills. Then I put a deposit on a new car. You know, I've been wanting that luxury SUV for a while. Oh, and I booked myself a vacation, a cruise, actually. You'd be so proud of me, honey. I got the penthouse suite." She said it so casually, like she hadn't just stolen our honeymoon and replaced it with her own indulgence. Jake exhaled through his nose, his fingers tapping the table. Then, to my shock, he smiled. But it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile you see just before everything falls apart. "That's great, Mom," he said slowly. "That's really, really great." Diane hesitated. "What? What do you mean?" Jake leaned forward. "It's fantastic to know that you spent money that didn't belong to you, because that means we have a problem, right?" The room fell into complete silence. Jake calmly reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped a few times on the screen, then turned the phone around so Diane could clearly see what he was doing. He was calling the bank. "Hi," Jake said, keeping his gaze locked on Diane. "I'd like to report fraudulent activity on my account." Diane's confident expression vanished. Her eyes widened in shock. "Jake, what are you doing?" she demanded, voice shaking. Jake didn't acknowledge her. "I'd like to dispute several unauthorized transfers," he continued, his tone steady. He paused, listening for a moment. "Yes, I know exactly who did it. I have the name and account number right here." Diane shot up from her seat, nearly knocking it over in her haste. "Jake, stop, you can't." "Oh, I can," Jake said, still smiling, though it wasn't a pleasant smile. "You see, Mom, you're not authorized to access my account. So you stole from me, and banks don't take kindly to fraud." Diane's face turned a deep shade of red. The guests started murmuring, some even pulling out their phones to record the scene. Jake tilted his head slightly. "I wonder how the bank will handle this," he mused, "especially when I mention the cruise you booked with stolen money." Diane's gasp echoed throughout the room. "Jake, I'm your mother. You can't." "I can," Jake said flatly. The whole room was watching now, and Diane seemed to realize, for the first time, that she was utterly alone in this situation. She glanced around, panic creeping onto her face. But Jake wasn't done. He turned to me, squeezed my hand, then faced his mother again. "By the way, Mom," he said, his voice deceptively calm. Diane's eyes darted nervously. "What?" she asked, clearly unsettled. Jake's grin widened. "Remember that prenuptial agreement you told me not to sign? The one you insisted was ridiculous and unnecessary." Diane blinked, then quickly answered, "Of course, I remember." Jake's smile grew even wider. "Well, I signed it anyway." Diane froze. It was as if time had stopped. I almost thought she was going to collapse. Jake shrugged nonchalantly. "And guess what? One of the conditions in it is that our accounts remain separate," he added, gesturing toward my phone. "Which means, not only did you steal from me, you stole from my wife too." The color drained from Diane's face. In that instant, she understood that she wasn't just dealing with her son anymore. She was facing both of us. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Diane stood there, her mouth opening and closing in disbelief. She looked around, expecting someone to defend her, but no one did. No one came to her side. Her voice shook as she tried to salvage the situation. "Jake, sweetie, let's not go too far. We can talk this through." But Jake wasn't having it. He put the phone on speaker just as the bank representative came back on the line. "Sir, we flagged the unauthorized transactions. Since the recipient's account is under a different name, we can escalate this as fraud. Would you like to proceed with a full investigation?" Diane lunged at Jake's phone, trying to grab it from him. "Jake, stop. We can resolve this peacefully." Jake leaned back in his chair, his voice chilling. "Yeah, go ahead and proceed." Diane gasped, her eyes wide with horror. "You wouldn't do this to your own mother." Jake didn't even blink. "You already did this to yourself." The bank representative continued. "Understood, sir. We will reverse the charges and notify the authorities. There will be a temporary freeze on the recipient's account while we investigate. If this case is confirmed as fraud, legal action may be taken." Diane shrieked in a panic. "Legal action? No, no, don't let them do this." But Jake wasn't done with her yet. "Oh, don't worry, Mom," he said, dripping with sarcasm. "I'll make sure you won't get arrested. Yet." He smirked. "But the money? That's gone. You won't see a single cent of it." I could feel the satisfaction radiating off Jake as he watched Diane's face twist with rage. But what she did next completely caught me off guard. With wild, frantic eyes, she turned to me. "This is your fault," she screamed, her voice full of venom. "You poisoned my son against me. He never would have done this before you came into his life." I held my ground, my voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around me. I didn't make you steal from us. That was all you. Diane looked around frantically, searching for someone to back her up. But all she saw were eyes filled with judgment, her face twisted in desperation, and then, like a switch flipped, she suddenly smiled. It was a slow, chilling smile that sent a shiver down my spine. Fine, she said sweetly. If I can't have the money, then neither will you. Before I could react, she pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. My heart raced. What are you doing? I demanded. She grinned wickedly, her eyes glinting with malice. Oh, just making a quick phone call, she said. I may not have access to your bank accounts anymore, but I still have a few tricks left. She hit the call button, and when she spoke, her voice was sickly sweet. Hi, this is Diane. I need to report a stolen credit card. I felt my blood run cold. I knew exactly what she was trying to do. She was attempting to sabotage us by falsely reporting fraud on our joint wedding account, hoping to freeze the funds we had just recovered. I lunged forward, ready to stop her, but Jake was quicker. He snatched the phone from her and put it on speaker. Ma'am, the fraud department representative said, you're reporting a stolen card. Can you confirm the account holder's name? Diane hesitated. Her mouth twitched nervously as she looked between me and Jake. Jake raised an eyebrow. Go ahead, Mom. Tell them whose account you're reporting stolen. Diane swallowed hard. Oh well, it's my son's account. The bank rep cut her off. Ma'am, unless you are the primary account holder, you cannot report fraud on this card. False reports will result in legal consequences. Diane's face drained of color. She glanced around the room, realizing she had just made everything worse for herself. Jake's laughter filled the room, a slow, mocking laugh that made me feel proud of him. Oh, Mom, he said, shaking his head. You just can't stop, can you? Diane's face was now a deep shade of red. She was visibly shaking. I didn't mean to. Before she could say anything more, her phone buzzed. She grabbed it quickly, glanced at the screen, and paled. Jake smirked. That's the bank, he said, his voice full of smug satisfaction. She didn't pick up. She didn't have to, because at that moment, a family friend stood up and cleared his throat. Diane, he said slowly, you do realize. Remember, I'm a lawyer, right? Diane's eyes went wide as Jake crossed his arms. What you just did, that's attempted financial fraud. And you did it right in front of 50 people. A murmur spread through the room, and several guests nodded in agreement. Diane took a step back. I wasn't. The lawyer raised a hand, silencing her. Save it. You better start owning up to this before it gets any worse. Diane spun toward Jake, desperation in her voice. Sweetheart, you're not really going to let them do this to me, are you? Jake gave her a long, hard stare before smiling. You did this to yourself. Diane let out a strangled cry. Jake, please. Jake shrugged, unbothered. Enjoy your vacation, Mom. It may not be a cruise, but I hear jail cells come with a nice view. Diane's face crumpled, and in that instant, it was clear. She finally realized she'd lost. She stood frozen, drained of color, hands shaking. The reality hit her. She had lost control. But she wasn't finished yet. Come on, she scoffed, trying to laugh it off. This is ridiculous. You're seriously going to ruin your wedding day over a small misunderstanding. I'd had enough. I stepped forward. A misunderstanding. My voice wavered, not from fear, but from fury. You stole from us. You took our honeymoon fund, spent it on yourself, and tried committing bank fraud in front of 50 witnesses. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime. Diane's forced smile twitched. But I wasn't done. You keep acting like we owe you something, I snapped, my voice rising. Like your son's money, our money, belongs to you. Well, guess what, Diane? I tilted my head. It doesn't. A few guests clapped. Diane whipped around, glaring at those who dared to support me. But she wasn't just losing control of the night. She was losing control of her son. Jake folded his arms, exhaling sharply. You know what, Mom? He let out a bitter laugh. This is actually the perfect moment for something I've been holding back. Diane tensed. The what? Jake's gaze never left hers. I've been done with you for a long time. The only reason I kept talking to you was because I foolishly thought you could change, but you can't. After tonight, I'm cutting you out of my life completely. Diane's eyes widened. You don't mean that. Jake's voice was steady and resolute. I do. Diane's breath caught, and it was as if the room collectively held its breath. The silence was deafening. Jake turned to me, took my hand, and kissed my fingers before facing Diane once more. "You took our money," he said, his tone final. "So now I'm taking something from you." Diane gulped. "You don't have a son anymore." A shocked gasp echoed around the room. Diane trembled, her body shaking with disbelief. "You don't mean that," she whispered. Jake didn't flinch. "I do. From now on, I want nothing to do with you. No calls, no visits, no texts. If you ever try to contact me or my wife again, I'll get a restraining order." Diane's breath turned erratic, her eyes wide with panic. "No, no, no. Jake, you can't do this. I'm your mother. I raised you." Jake's expression hardened. "And you just showed me exactly what kind of mother you are." Diane cracked. Her face twisted, her body trembling with rage. Then, like a child throwing a tantrum, she screamed, a blood-curdling wail. She stomped her foot, her body quivering with fury. "You ungrateful little." Jake grabbed my hand and turned away from her. "Come on, babe. Let's go enjoy the rest of our wedding." And just like that, we walked away, leaving her humiliated, exposed, and completely alone. But the best part? The real revenge came later, the aftermath. Diane's downfall was just beginning. The next morning, the bank reversed the fraudulent transactions. Every dollar she took was returned to our accounts. Her luxury car deposit, canceled. The cruise she booked, gone. Her accounts were frozen due to the fraud report, and her bank flagged her for suspicious activity. For weeks, she couldn't access her own money while they investigated. Then the police came to pay her a visit. Turns out, fraud is a serious crime, and while she wasn't arrested, she was formally warned that any future thefts would result in charges. She became a pariah. Word spread fast. People distanced themselves from her. Friends, family, even her own relatives. She was isolated. But the ultimate revenge came 3 months later. Jake and I finally went on our honeymoon, a fully upgraded first-class trip to Greece, paid for entirely by wedding guests who loathed Diane. They sent us extra money just to spite her. We posted photo after photo, and Diane saw every single one. According to one of Jake's distant cousins, she cried about it for weeks. Final words. Diane lost everything that day: her son, her reputation, her control. And the best part, she did it all to herself. As for Jake and me, we've never been happier. We're building a life free from her toxicity, and we have zero regrets. Because in the end, the best revenge is living well. And Diane? She'll have to live with the consequences of her actions for the rest of her life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay stunned.